Hi, I'm Daniel Reyes, and let me tell you something my life taught me the hard way. Sometimes, the people who claim to love you most are the first to bet against you. For years, my own family treated me like the walking punchline at their dinner table. My older brother wore success like a crown, while I was branded the dropout, the disappointment, the failure. They thought they had me figured out. But when the day came, and I finally got my revenge, the golden boy of the family lost everything, in just 24 hours. Before I take you into the whole story, and trust me, it's a ride, you should hit that subscribe button and like this video. If you've ever been underestimated, written off, or treated like you were nothing, this one's for you. Was born into the Reyes family, a family where achievement wasn't just encouraged, it was oxygen. My father, a respected economics professor, had one obsession: prestige. He measured worth in degrees, salaries, and who your name impressed when you dropped it into conversation. And in that world, my older brother, Jonathan, was the masterpiece. Straight A student, class president, Ivy League graduate. By 25, he was already making 7 figures on Wall Street. My parents glowed with pride. They bragged about him at every social event. To them, Jonathan was the ultimate proof that they'd raised their children right. Then there was me, Daniel. The dropout. The wasted potential. I didn't speak the same language my family did. While Jonathan memorized formulas, I tore apart old computers just to see how they worked. While he perfected his GPA, I was teaching myself to code, chasing ideas bigger than any textbook. I wasn't reckless, I was just wired differently. But in my house? Different was a crime. When I left college after my sophomore year, you'd think I'd confessed to murder. My father's face hardened like stone. Jonathan is securing million-dollar deals, and you're tinkering in a warehouse, he spat. My mother cried for weeks, calling me at odd hours just to whisper, "It's not too late, honey, you can still go back, we can fix this." But the worst was Jonathan. He didn't bother with disappointment. He went straight to mockery. That spring, he came home from New York in his tailored suit, Harvard alumni pin shining proudly. He found me in the garage, hunched over a half-assembled server. He leaned against the doorframe, smirking. "Don't worry, little brother. When your dreams collapse, I'll make sure you get a safe desk job under me. Someone's gotta handle the paperwork." I can still feel the heat that rose in my chest, the burn behind my eyes as I forced a laugh. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. But when he left, when the garage door slammed shut, I sat there for hours, staring at the blinking cursor on my computer screen. That night, I made myself a promise: I wasn't going to survive just to prove them wrong. I was going to build something they couldn't ignore. The first years nearly broke me. And I don't say that lightly. My office was a storage unit with a leaky roof and one flickering light bulb. My mattress was wedged between servers, and the hum of cooling fans was my lullaby. My meals were ramen noodles, dollar pizza slices, and coffee, always coffee. My wardrobe? 2 hoodies and a rotation of thrift store jeans. Meanwhile, Jonathan was everywhere, on Instagram sipping champagne on yachts, in magazines shaking hands with CEOs, at family dinners being toasted for his brilliance. And me? At best, I was the footnote. Oh, Daniel's still working on his little project. Always that word, little. But here's the thing about suffering: it sharpens vision. While Jonathan chased titles, I chased a problem I knew was worth solving. Small businesses were drowning under outdated, overpriced banking software designed for Fortune 500 companies. Nobody was looking out for the little guys. So I built FinGuard, a lean, intuitive platform that gave small businesses the tools they needed without the costs they couldn't afford. At first, it was just a coffee shop down the street that trusted me. Then a chain of bakeries. Then a regional grocery chain. And before I knew it, FinGuard was quietly processing over $1 billion in transactions within 4 years. But none of that mattered at home. Every family gathering was the same script. Jonathan's triumphs were paraded around like trophies. Jonathan just landed a hedge fund client. Jonathan was on CNBC. My mother beamed, my father raised his glass, and the relatives clapped politely. Then came my turn. My mother's voice would soften, her smile just a little strained. "Oh, Daniel's company is still going, you know, he's always been good with computers." Still going. Like I was a hobbyist tinkering in the garage. Like I wasn't quietly building an empire under their noses. The dismissal cut deeper than they ever realized. I'd sit there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, hearing the laughter, seeing Jonathan's smug grin across the table. I wanted to scream, "Do you not see what I'm building? Do you not see what I've created with nothing but grit and sleepless nights?" But I didn't scream. I swallowed the rage and turned it into fuel. For a decade, that was my life. Quiet victories, louder humiliations. I scaled Fingard globally, expanded product lines, acquired smaller firms, and built a client list that included names Jonathan's firm drooled over. And still, Daniel's little company. But last month, everything changed. Jonathan's firm hosted a gala at the Ritz-Carlton to celebrate his appointment as managing partner. It was the event of the season, half of Manhattan's financial elite packed into one ballroom. My parents were ecstatic, buzzing with pride, inviting everyone they'd ever wanted to impress. Of course, I went. I wasn't about to give them another excuse to say I'd disappointed them. I rented a simple black suit, polished my shoes, and walked into the glittering room with my head held high. My mother's eyes swept over me, and I caught the flicker of disapproval. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she whispered, tugging at my lapel. "This is an important night for your brother." I just smiled and said nothing. The evening unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Speeches praising Jonathan's brilliance, his work ethic, his leadership. The word legacy floated through the air like perfume. My father glowed, my mother dabbed at tears, relatives gushed. Then Jonathan himself took the stage. He clinked his glass, flashed his perfect smile, and began. "Thank you all for being here. Tonight isn't just about my promotion, it's about the future of this firm. We're proud to announce our expansion into financial technology." I felt my stomach tighten. In fact, his eyes locked on mine across the room, and his smirk widened. "We're planning to acquire my brother's small company as our first step. It's time for Fingard to be run by professionals with real credentials." The room erupted in laughter and polite applause. My mother leaned over to her friends, gushing about the two brothers finally working together. My father nodded proudly. Jonathan raised his glass toward me like he was tossing a bone to a dog. "Don't worry, Daniel. I'll make sure you have a comfortable role after the acquisition." The humiliation burned so hot I could barely hear the rest of his speech. My hands trembled around my glass. My heart hammered in my chest. But my face? Calm. I lifted my drink, forced a smile, and said only one thing. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow." Jonathan blinked, surprised. The crowd murmured, intrigued. But I didn't give him the satisfaction of a scene. I simply set my glass down and walked out into the cold Manhattan night. And as I stood on the curb, watching yellow cabs streak by, one thought blazed in my mind. Tomorrow, Jonathan Reyes was going to regret every word. And that's where I'll pause this part of the story. Because what happened the next morning wasn't just a meeting, it was a reckoning. I wish I could tell you that once I made that vow on my office mattress, things started to fall into place. That the universe rewarded my determination with quick success. But the truth? It was brutal. The first 6 months nearly crushed me. I woke up every morning to the metallic hum of servers and the stale smell of cardboard boxes in that rented storage unit. My desk was a folding table I'd pulled from a yard sale. My chair? A creaky lawn recliner that pinched my back so badly, I developed chronic stiffness by the age of 22. I'd spend 16-hour days coding, sketching out designs, cold emailing potential investors, and begging small business owners to give my prototype a chance. Out of every 50 pitches, maybe one person agreed to a meeting. And out of every 10 meetings, 9 ended with some version of, "You're too young. This seems risky. Maybe come back when you've graduated." Each rejection was a blade twisting deeper, reminding me of Jonathan's words, "When your dreams collapse, I'll make sure you get a desk job." Sometimes I'd sit in the dark after another no, staring at my cracked phone screen, scrolling through Jonathan's latest posts. Him clinking glasses with CEOs in glass towers. Him boarding private jets. Him glowing under stage lights as he gave keynote speeches. And then I'd glance around at my life, half-eaten noodles, overdue bills, a stack of maxed-out credit cards. The contrast was suffocating. But you know what the worst part was? Family dinners. Because no matter how much progress I thought I'd made that week, it all evaporated when I sat at that table. "Jonathan just got promoted again," my mother would chirp, her pearls glinting as she leaned forward. "Did you see his interview on CNBC?" "Oh, yes," my father would beam. "The firm says he's on track to become the youngest managing partner in history." Then their eyes would turn to me, as if I were an afterthought. "And Daniel," my mother would say gently, "how's your little company?" That word. Little. It stung worse than any investor's rejection. Because in their eyes, it didn't matter if I'd signed a new client or survived another month, it was still small, still less, still not enough. I'd force a smile and say, "It's going." But inside, I was drowning. There were nights I thought about quitting. Packing it all up, calling Jonathan, swallowing my pride, and begging for that safe desk job he promised. But every time that thought crept in, I remembered his smirk. The way his lips curved upward when he said, "When your dreams collapse." I couldn't let that prophecy come true. So I doubled down. I started living leaner than ever. Sold my car, biked everywhere, canceled my phone plan, and lived on dollar store groceries. I slept on that same floor mattress for years, the springs digging into my ribs until I grew used to the discomfort. But piece by piece, things began to shift. A local coffee shop agreed to try my platform, just a trial. But when their manager told me it saved them nearly $800 in fees that first month, word spread. Soon, 3 other shops signed on. Then a small bakery chain. Then, somehow, a grocery distributor. It was slow, almost invisible progress, but for me, it was oxygen. Still, even as Fingard began to sprout roots, Jonathan's shadow loomed. He was scaling skyscrapers while I was climbing fire escapes. His name was synonymous with prestige, while mine was whispered in doubt. And that's when the worst blow landed. At my cousin's wedding, with relatives packed into a gilded banquet hall, Jonathan pulled me aside. His tie was silk, his cologne sharp, his smile gleaming like a dagger. "Little brother," he said, voice dripping with condescension. "I admire your persistence. Really, I do. But let's be honest. You're not building an empire. You're wasting your 20s. And when you finally realize it, I'll still be here. Maybe I'll even let you run errands at the firm. Keep you busy." He patted my shoulder like I was a child. And for the first time in years, I felt the anger roar instead of sink. I didn't argue. Didn't snap back. Didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. But inside, I swore that moment would come back to haunt him. Because if there's one thing I learned during those years of struggle, it's this. The people who dismiss you today will choke on their laughter tomorrow. And Jonathan? He was about to choke harder than anyone. There comes a point in every storm when you stop wondering if you'll survive it, and you start realizing you can navigate it. For me, that moment arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my desk, a real one this time, not a folding table, when an email popped up. Subject line, partnership inquiry. The sender? A mid-sized regional bank. They wanted to talk about integrating Fingard into their systems. Not a coffee shop. Not a bakery. A bank. I stared at the screen, barely breathing, afraid if I blinked it would vanish. Then I hit reply, set up the meeting, and within 2 months, Fingard was processing millions in transactions. That deal changed everything. Word spread fast. Other banks called. Insurance companies called. Even some hedge funds sniffed around. Every new contract felt like another brick laid in a foundation that had once been nothing but sand. For the first time in years, I walked into family dinners with a secret: I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building an empire. But did my parents notice? No. Did Jonathan notice? Of course not. At one Thanksgiving, while I tried to share a small win, that Fingard had secured a regional partnership, my father waved me off. Jonathan just closed a deal with $1 billion hedge fund, he said proudly. Now that's impressive. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. But quietly, in the background, I kept scaling. I built a team. Hired engineers sharper than me, marketers who could spin fire into gold, and lawyers who protected every line of code we wrote. We filed patents, hundreds of them. Algorithms, systems, security protocols. A fortress of intellectual property. And as the years rolled on, Fingard became more than a company. It became my answer to every insult. Every smirk. Every dismissive little. By year 8, we were processing billions in annual volume. Investors lined up. A valuation firm pegged us at $100 million. That's when I realized. Jonathan had no idea the trap he was walking into. Because while he was celebrating champagne victories, his firm had begun leaning on our systems. Quietly, without understanding the backbone, they'd built their success on the very foundation I created. And thanks to our patents, thanks to our contracts, they were locked in. But I didn't reveal a thing. Not yet. Instead, I played the waiting game. I knew Jonathan's ego. Knew he wouldn't be able to resist flaunting his power in front of me. And I was right. The invitation arrived on embossed cardstock: gala dinner in honor of Jonathan Reyes, managing partner. I read it 3 times, a smile tugging at my lips. This was it. The moment. The stage where he would try to humiliate me one last time, and where I would finally flip the script. The night of the gala, I wore a plain black suit. My mother said it looked too simple for the occasion. Jonathan, meanwhile, was draped in designer fabric, glowing under chandeliers, holding court like a king. The speeches began. Praise poured from every corner of the ballroom. Clients, colleagues, professors, all hailing Jonathan as the future of finance. Then he took the stage, glass raised, smirk gleaming. And I knew. Here it came. Tonight isn't just about my promotion, he said, voice smooth as polished steel. It's about the future of this firm. We're proud to announce our expansion into financial technology. In fact, his eyes locked on mine, a predator savoring its kill. We're planning to acquire my brother's small company as our first step. It's time for Fingard to be run by professionals with real credentials. Laughter rippled through the room. My mother beamed, whispering to friends. And Jonathan smirked wider, leaning into the mic. Don't worry, Daniel. I'll make sure you have a comfortable role after the acquisition. The humiliation seared like acid. But I didn't flinch. I raised my glass, smiled back, and said just loud enough for him to hear. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. He thought he'd won. But really, the game had just shifted. That night, I didn't sleep. I paced my office skyscraper suite, yes, a skyscraper by then, finalizing everything. I laid up contracts, polished presentations, checked and rechecked every clause, every signature. Because tomorrow, Jonathan wasn't walking into a negotiation. He was walking into an execution. The next morning, the air in my office felt electric. I'd barely slept. My veins buzzed with a cocktail of exhaustion and anticipation. By 9 a.m., the elevator dinged, and in walked Jonathan, custom suit, gleaming cufflinks, the same smug grin plastered across his face. Flanking him were two of the firm's lawyers, all polished shoes and briefcases. And behind them, my father, stiff as stone, jaw tight with expectation. Jonathan didn't even sit down before he started. "Daniel," he said smoothly, like we were playing a game he'd already won. "Let's make this simple. Here are the acquisition terms." He slid a folder across the table, eyes glinting. "Sign today, and we'll fold Fingard into the firm. You'll get a modest payout and a secure role. Nothing stressful. You'll thank me later." I let the silence hang, the hum of the projector filling the room. Then I leaned forward, tapped a button on the remote, and the screen behind me lit up. Slide 1, Fingard valuation, $100 million. Verified. Jonathan's smirk faltered. His brow furrowed. That can't be right. I clicked again. Slide 2, patent portfolio, 150 plus proprietary algorithms. The lawyers shifted uncomfortably, whispering. Click. Slide 3, client list. Jonathan's eyes widened as logo after logo filled the screen, firms his company bragged about working with, clients they flaunted at the gala. All of them already Fingards. "You see, Jonathan," I said evenly, my voice steady though my pulse pounded, "that massive deal your firm celebrated last quarter? They only signed because you offered them our systems. You've been building your empire on my foundation, without even realizing it." My father's face drained of color. The lawyers flipped frantically through their binders, realizing they had missed everything. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He looked like a man suddenly realizing the floor beneath him was quicksand. This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're bluffing." I clicked again. Final slide, acquisition notice, Fingard acquires, firm name, FinTech division. Effective immediately. The signed contracts appeared, stamped and sealed. I slid the folder across the table. Jonathan's face went white. "You can't," he stammered. "I already did," I interrupted, calm as ice. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My father's fists clenched on the table, veins bulging in his temples. Jonathan's lawyers whispered urgently, but there was no escape. The contracts were airtight. The board had already approved. For the first time in his life, Jonathan had nothing to say. He pushed back his chair, his voice breaking. This isn't over." But it was. By that afternoon, he resigned in disgrace. By evening, the news spread across Wall Street like wildfire. The Harvard Golden Boy had been outmaneuvered by his dropout brother. Phones rang. Articles published. Forums buzzed. Some called it poetic justice. Others called it blood sport. I just called it closure. My mother left a dozen voicemails, sobbing about how I had ruined the family's reputation. I didn't answer. Because in truth, I hadn't ruined anything. I'd simply shown the world who we really were. The following week, I received an email from MIT. They wanted me to keynote their conference on innovation, specifically, on how breakthroughs often come from those without traditional degrees. I accepted. Standing on that stage, looking out at thousands of students, entrepreneurs, and skeptics, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Jonathan, last I heard, is dabbling in real estate somewhere upstate. No more galas. No more magazine covers. Just a man who once smirked at his younger brother, only to choke on his own arrogance. And me? I look around my skyscraper office, at the hundreds of employees building something that matters, at the empire that rose from noodles and rejection letters, and I smile. Because the truth is, not all dropouts fail. Not all degrees guarantee success. And sometimes, the people who laugh at your dreams are the ones who crumble in the end. If you've ever been underestimated, mocked, or told you'd never make it, let this story sink in. Revenge isn't always about rage, it's about persistence. About holding your ground when everyone else expects you to fall. Because nothing is more satisfying than proving yourself right. If this story hit home, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful tales of revenge, and drop a comment sharing a time when someone doubted you. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't fire and fury. It's success so undeniable, even your enemies can't look you in the eye.